I'd like to welcome you all back. Whether you attended Navigating the New Normal or Empower Her, I hope you found the session informative, asked questions, and used the opportunity to network. Now, once again, do use the opportunity to connect with any panelist after this event if you have further questions. And on behalf of AABE-NYMAC, thank you to all the panelists for your time. I'd now like to introduce our keynote speaker of this closing session, attorney and professor of law and government at Medgar Evers College, Gregorio Mayers. He will be speaking on effective leadership and also about the Black Lives Matter movement. Now, as a brief introduction, Professor Mayers is a tenured professor on administrative and regulatory law, public policy and state local government, and emergency disaster management. He's also a founder of GM Consulting, a government relations firm. In that role, he has represented several candidates for public office and in the private sector for clients who seek guidance on regulatory matters. He was even a senior advisor to then Mayor Bloomberg. Now, prior to his civil career, he was appointed to the NYC Environmental Control Board, where he adjudicated cases from the Department of Environmental Protection, Buildings, Sanitation, Health, Transportation, NYPD, and FDNY. He also currently serves on the board of the Brooklyn Legal Services. Please welcome Professor Gregorio Mayers.
Sure. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. And let me just say I congratulate you and your team and the leadership in moving forward with this virtual summit. Again, thank you for the wonderful introduction. Let me begin by just thanking and acknowledging the leadership of AABE, certainly Mr. Bill Suggs, who certainly has played a leadership role in the organization, but to the members of the Metro chapter, all of you who have successfully, over the years, not just now, over the years, worked successfully with a voice in New York. In this entire metro area. I have seen it, I have witnessed it, my colleagues have. So congratulations on this summit. The word summit says a lot from a policy perspective, because when we talk about a summit, it means that deep thought policy implications, recommendations, and suggestions will come out of the discussion. So again, I thank the leadership from just putting in a pandemic time like this to have this summit together, that we can have a voice and to talk about how important leadership is. I'm going to preface my remarks. As Mr. Shaw just said, I've spent 8 years as a senior advisor at City Hall, working under the leadership of Mayor Michael Bloomberg, who, as many of you know, by trade is an electrical engineer. So our leadership, a lot was set on, particularly when Sandy hit, on data, on looking at emerging technology and how it works and how we move from there from a policy perspective. But my talk today is about really leadership and the intersectionality of the Black Lives Matter. And why is that so important? That is really important because I cannot think of a time where leadership was much more needed than ever, on a federal level, on a state level, and a local level. So we live in a capitalist society, and one of the things that impacts immigrants and impact minorities so much so when they complain is that it's not necessarily always racism. It is the fact that we have to understand that if we are living in a capitalist society, if we're moving in a socio-economic market, that dictates how policies are done. And sometimes those decisions may seem racist or may seem unfavorable. Now, we know, and you guys, I don't have to preach to the energy sectors folks here that, here in the United States, we use, a fourth, 25% of the world's oil and energy and technology. And we're just one nation. But how are we able to do that? We're able to do that by leadership, by force, by power. And a lot of other technology usage in terms of our business sector and how we remain so strong. And Abe is here to make sure that we continue to do that. But leadership, let's take leadership in context. Everyone here is certainly a leader. Everyone certainly here as in your own capacity has led an organization, or in your job currently you play a leadership role. But again, in a pandemic, I don't think that we have seen such disaster as and the impact, lives lost, right? With this pandemic, it takes a federal level and a state level combined with a city level to address what is happening now. But let me just preface my remarks once more to thank Abe and to thank the leadership of the energy sectors. That can you imagine in a pandemic if we were not having our electrical system working, our gas working, as the weather gets colder. So thank you. So that shows the leadership on that sector. So I want to thank you there and that. But what does leadership looks like on the federal level? Leadership looks like on the federal level very simple. You heard from Congresswoman Yvette Clarke yesterday. She spoke eloquently. She spoke about Abe being in part of that leadership. If Abe or any organization that you belong to does not have an agenda, then that's a failed leadership. If you have not sat with your congressperson, whether it be Hakeem Jeffries or Yvette Clarke or Nydia Velasquez, because I'm talking about Brooklyn or whoever it may be, or Greg Meeks, from an individual capacity or an organization or from your church, that's a failed leadership. Your elected officials should know they are your voice in Washington. Your issues and your concerns should not be grumbled at the dinner table or having drinks. So leadership at the federal level looks pretty much the same at the state. If your state representative have not heard your concerns, then that's a failed leadership on the part of your organization, your community board, right? It's a failed leadership on the part that you as an individual. If your school not getting more money where your kids are 10, and it's still the same way, if they're getting new funding, if there are no new after school program, that's failure of leadership on the local level as well, where those fundings come from, right? So leadership looks like first an agenda setting, right? In Washington, in Albany, and in City Hall, every year the mayor, the governor, and the president sets an agenda. An agenda setting is set forth where the president, the governor, and the mayor sets forth 5 or 6 key initiatives that they're going to take a lead on, and they're going to see that happens to fruition. And then we have where the legislative members, the city council members say to their community folks, what do you need on your agenda, right? Congresswoman Clarke has said to me already, what is the agenda? What are the key 3 things that Brooklyn needs or that you need in your community? So again, leadership looks like a fact of if your church, your not-for-profit organization, your community, your block association is not on the forefront of having an agenda to your elected official, that's failed leadership. Why? Because when the budget sets forth the $5 trillion budget, the largest budget in the world economy, the federal budget, you need to have part of that, both from financially, economically, and from a policy perspective and legislative where you benefit. If there's no increase in your Social Security benefit, then that's failed leadership. So again, what happens now is that there's a new need for characteristics of a new age leaders. What does that look like? And that takes clearly long-term planning. So for the 21st century, given what we're dealing with in this pandemic, it is critical that organizations such as AABE, organizations such as the NAACP, organizations such as any uh, uh, um, forum organizations dealing with public policy, they're dealing with economic development, um, change and look at the long-term planning. What is the next 5 years? What we have seen with this pandemic is going to push us back 5 years. There's a saying that when America gets a cold, other people gets what? And you know that saying, right? You get the flu, you get everything else. So what happens that translate into if you are not prepared, if you don't have an agenda, meaning if AABE and other organizations that we know very well is not on the forefront, then you will suffer. Clearly, they're going to be budgetary issues for the next 4 or 5 years, being less resources, less services. It's going to mean there's going to be a rise in the number of taxes and so forth to accommodate the loss. So, what does this mean in terms of the Black Lives Matters, right? So again, what we've seen is the from April, May, so we've seen a number of Black men and Black women die on their hands by law enforcement, unjustifiable death. Clearly, some of that is still being in the court system, and which means is that their clear leadership. What we found is that, and I know this for a fact of being a professor, many of my students said, Professor, Washington is not hearing us, City Council is not hearing us, Albany is not hearing us, so we got to take heed and move forward to make change. Well, they did. Those protests by young people, they were black, white, blue, green, from all denomination, they came together, right? The women movement, like Tamika Mallory and others that started a year or 2 years ago in terms of galvanizing support. What they were doing was getting their voices heard. These are all young leaders, 18 to 36 years old, who were definitely part of the Black Lives Matter leadership. And what they did, they made their voices heard, right? They made their voices heard, and they formed a group that is concerned, and they push legislation, and they push for criminal justice reform. You saw where the president and Hakeem Jeffries and others and Yvette Clarke pushed for economic reform, also criminal justice reform. On the state level, what you saw recently is we had bail reform. So the movement was very critical. Had it not been, unfortunately, for the life that's been lost, Black Life Matters came about, with the killing, the unwanted, justifiable killing in Kentucky, in Minnesota, and you know their names. So they have risen to the attention now that where we are today is now they are limited in their leadership skills in how they take advantage of this power, this new leading power that they have. They have a voice. Washington listens to the Black Lives Matters. Albany listens. Every state legislative body listens. Every city council in every part of the country has to adhere and listen to the Black Lives Matters. Now, how, what opportunities will that be, an opportunity or fail leadership? And that's really the question. They have they have moved the chain as far as they can. They have put the issues of racism, of injustice, everything that has impacted us as far as they can. Washington has heard, Albany has heard, the city has heard. But this moved me now to the next deck. What you have seen is now corporate America. Corporate America has listened. Remember, I opened up saying we live in a corporate society. We live in where this is a market economy. So then in the next slides, we will look at the corporate support and for the Black Lives Matters. Now, let's take a look at this. None of these Fortune 500 companies sat down and said, in the next year, we're going to make changes to include and to make sure that minorities and others get a piece of the pie. Is that correct? No, no. But now Home Depot has contributed 1 million to the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights, right? So Home Depot, where black, blue, green people shop, have decided to say, I want to be, and we as a company, corporate responsibility, want to be on the record. Well, guess what? I'm not sure, but I'm not too sure how many meetings have occurred with the Black Lives Matters leadership and Home Depot board. That's where now the new young leadership needs training. That's where they need the current leadership in both Washington, Albany, you as leaders in ABE and Energy to work with them to say, let's go to Home Depot and let's set forth how many, let's get stocks in a Home Depot. Let's get board representation on a Home Depot board. Let's get the number of blacks in corporate America in Home Depot to put 20% more of African American, Latinos, and other minorities in there. That's what that leadership means. If not, it's a failed leadership. It is done and they'll wash their hands, right? We look at gaming companies have joined the efforts, right? Right? EA has pledged 1 million to groups including Equal Justice Initiatives and to the NAACP Equal Defense Fund, right? We have the Square Enix has donated $250,000 and it's matching its employees' donation to Black Lives Matters. Right? Do you see that? That is power. That is economic power that can translate into what the political power. Look at that. But for of the Black Lives Movement, now we see corporate responsibility stepping up like they've never done. And then, of course, we have Ubi folks who's contributed 100,000 to the NAACP and to Black Lives Matters. Okay, so when we look at the next slide, again, corporate support, right? We have here another, right? Let's look at this. Next step is Minnetonka-based United Health Group is donating 5 million to the YMCA Equity Innovation Center for Excellence, and another 5 million as well. That is power, right? For 25,000 hours of employees volunteering time to rebuild businesses, cities, neighborhoods, and affected by riots. Time enough. How many times have we seen protests? Rodney King back in the 90s. Corporate America did not step up. But you're talking about leadership. There is strong leadership, and that correlation with the leadership in the Black Lives Matter. Their voices has been heard. We need to make sure that those voices continue to be heard, and they cannot do it on their own. And this is where now the energy sectors, this is where the corporate sectors, this is where the home care industry, this is where the construction industry, this is where the engineering firms, black firms, Latino, all come together. This is when the educators come together now, because corporate America is listening. Corporate America is not turning a blind eye or deaf ear. They are listening. And then we have Facebook, where we know that is critical in terms of communication, right? It is critical in social media, where certainly the organizers in Black Lives Matters use Facebook. They have pledged 10 million to organizations campaigning for racial justice. See, Mark Zuckerberg announced that several months ago. That is power. Now, I can't think of another time in history when corporate America has done this leap. But guess what? It will stop soon, because they would have said, we didn't see any agenda, right? I don't know how many groups have sat and asked for a meeting with Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook, because that 10 million should be 20 million. It should be 30 million. And we're talking about technology and the energy sector. There may be a coalition where AABE should be on the forefront, working with Facebook and working with these companies in terms of being on the cutting edge with what are the issues that will be affecting African Americans and Latinos and others in this new world, and how Facebook will play a role. But again, the Black Lives Matters alone, not saying they're not brilliant enough, but they need help. Here is where the intersectionality of the powers come in on the federal, state, local. Here is where the churches come in to work with the Black Lives Matters. Here is where organizations such as the NAACP, Urban League come in to be on the forefront. So there are opportunities. There are opportunities to make change, right? And those opportunities on the corporate side will certainly move over to the federal side and the local side. Let's go to the next slide. Again, all of this. Apple CEO Tim Cook announced an unknown donation will be made by the company and organization, including the Equal Justice Initiative, a not-for-profit committed to challenging racial justice. Okay, Apple. Apple said, how many Apple phones? We're talking about AABE, the Association of Black and Energy, has African Americans purchased. I know the numbers, right? Millions. You know it too as well. And you're paying monthly. You're paying for the Apple products on it, of course, like everyone else is paying. But have your voices been heard? Has Apple treated you nicely? Now they're doing that. Now they don't want to lose business. Now they don't want you to boycott. Now here's an opportunity for Abe to be on the table with Apple, technology company, your energy company, right? To come together and foster stronger relationship. That's what I'm asking for, right? Chip maker Intel is donating 1 million to community efforts fighting racial injustice, right? I would like to see that translated into racial and economic, right? Where again, they start to hire, and not only hire, it's not only jobs, that we get certain opportunities to sit on their boards, make decision, right? And also to a piece of the pie, right? So if we're spending in there and making the shareholders rich, then we need some type of reciprocal earnings from it on there. Maybe there's an education and stuff where as the stocks and new IPOs are issued, Abe then reach out to other young energy companies and we able to purchase and so forth. It's all about economic development, right? Beauty company, right, last year has committed 500,000 to Black Lives Matters and another 500,000 to support Black-owned CEO, right? Right? Emily Weiss announced on Sunday. That is critical. I would like to see Abe, right, choose several of these companies and these organizations fit that they will be part of that leadership. And that's easy. It's a simple letter. And this is the organization. Here's what we do. And we're looking for a meeting, right? Next slide. As we move forward, we want to take a look at these others. Let's look at the next slide with corporate support on there. Now, right, we have, thank you. We have smaller donations, right, that have come in from several companies, 100,000 to the NAACP, right? Shave Moistures, which pledge a further 100,000 for activism, fighting social justice. I want to fight economic justice as well, right? Um, and then you have, of course, the Riley Group, which is donating 50,000 to the NAACP, right? Right. EFI Beauty is donating 25,000 to the Color of Change Fitness Company, and we go on and on in terms of that. This is powerful. This is what's called now calls to action for leadership, right? Which is now in terms of next steps, the next slide, and the conclusion. So, what are the next steps in the next quarter? As a corporate institution, you can work from Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. We know we're in Q4. What are the next steps in increasing minority representation on boards? What are the next step in Abe fostering stronger relationship with Apple and with Google now that they know that they have an opportunity, they have a door, they have a window open? What is the next steps in terms of Abe fostering and collaborating with the Black Lives Matter and partnering with them in helping them with their leadership and building a coalition, a stronger coalition, and probably taking that with a public policy issue or a white policy paper to Albany on state energy issue? What does that look like? What does the next step look like? Yvette Clarke is on the Energy and Commerce Committee, as you heard her speak so eloquently yesterday. What would that look like in the next legislative session? What does Abe see? What is the vision, right? So leadership takes vision and it takes innovation. One of the things that I had in there that I didn't touch on much was innovation. And here is a time now where an organization like Abe have the innovation and the vision to put together a long-term plan, 5 to 10 years, of what a coalition building would look like, working with the Black Lives Matter. Now, again, we have not seen corporate support. We have not seen a response from Washington, from Albany, from City Hall. like in since the early civil rights movement in the 50s and the 60s, but for the Black Lives Matter movement, right? Made it clear. And it was beautiful because blacks, Latinos, Asian, whites, right? Any other ethnic group, Native American, okay? Folks from the Middle Eastern, folks from Asia, folks from all over, every ethnic group said, this is wrong. That's not the way the young people really want to work. That's not the way we're looking at this discrimination. We want a piece of the pie, and this new generation is saying no to racism, but yes to economic opportunities. I don't have to tell you what the number looks like at Silicon Valley as I wrap up. I don't have to tell you the number of minorities who are in leadership position in the technology field or in the energy sector. I don't have to tell you what the number looks like of black owned who own energy companies or who are partners. I don't have to tell you much that the next stadium right here, the Atlantic Yards, yes, there is one minority owner, there. But I don't have to tell you when you go up to 34th Street with the Knicks and who owns that and where that representation, what that looks like. So again, as I summarize and I close, is this is a great opportunity as we come into 2021. ABE is a reputable organization. Over the years, you've had the inner hearing of the governor's office, of state legislatures, of the mayor's office. I know that with Bill Sugg when I was in City Hall, he made sure that he was there in the bullpen to address issues with us and the mayor. He made sure that he wanted more students involved and able to get a job in Con Edison. So I know he has done that with partnership. He's also worked on a number of educational issues. So Abe has been on the forefront. And my charge to Abe now is in work with the Black Lives Matter. We need a sit down table to bring those young 18 to 36-year-old who, with your experience, with your knowledge, can put forth policy papers and legislation in Albany and in Washington and also at City Hall. What does it look like? What is the vision of the energy sector should look like for African Americans, for minorities? What should it look like? Right? Should there be a monolithic monopoly controlling it? Are there opportunities in the energy sector for young college students? As I'm a college professor who are coming out, majoring in electrical engineering, mechanical engineer, environmental engineering. What relationship can Abe foster with other colleges and universities? And I know they have been, right? How can they meet and sit down with Facebook now that they have a voice and with Yvette Clarke to say, set up a meeting with these Fortune 500 and CEOs? So there is an opportunity for the leadership of Abe, for the leadership of each of his members to really intersect with the Black Lives Matters movement. If you haven't done so already, or if you're not thinking so already, then to bring that together with your elected officials, right? Because we want to make sure that legislation is put forth there that protect our interests, to make sure that the energy sector and any policy or legislation does not leave us in closed door, does not drastically impact people of color, and that we are at the table. We want to make sure that on communication, the FCC, as Kamala Harris and Joe Biden in Washington take heed for the next administration, that Abe is meeting with key leadership that will be appointed and that will be put in key cabinet position. That's what leadership look like. And the meeting means that you come with an agenda. It comes with innovation that you're going to be setting forward. So as I close in my remarks, I just want to remind you that there's never been a time like this in history. There's other been pandemics, but 1908, I believe it was, but nothing like this. So, how do you take leaders take advantage of opportunities? Leaders have vision. Leaders are innovative. Leaders look at what the social, economic, and political climate look and forecast and plan accordingly. So, therefore, there's no excuse going forward of what the world, this new normal, would look like. because from what we've seen, what are some of the challenges? We know that there are opportunities and that folks are able to rise to the occasion in times of need, such as now. So again, we have never seen a time like this where we are in a critical time where leadership is needed more than ever. But there is opportunity. There is that window of opportunity for Abe and for many of us to take that to the next level. And I am praying and being hopeful that the leadership of Abe hear my remarks. There's several of us that have the expertise in organizing, in leading, in putting these kind of projects and initiatives together. So I thank you for the opportunity. It is indeed an honor for me to address Abe on this summit, and I look forward to what will come out from the summit, from all the speakers, and what will be the recommendations on the next steps. But again, do not leave the Black Lives Matters young folks. They're crying for help. There's only so much they can do. And I think they're looking for leadership in all sectors. And I'm saying to Abe, this is a wonderful opportunity. And I look forward to you engaging further. I thank you so much and congratulations again on this summit.
Professor Mayers, thank you very much for your timely and impactful message, your call to action for leadership, and the next steps that ABE should take to build a coalition with corporations, academic institutions, and the government to support the Black Lives Matter movement. I'd now like to introduce our closing speaker of the summit, Terri Yardi. Terri Yardi is currently a manager of the NYC agencies at the National Grid. With over 19 years of experience, she has served as a call center representative, worked in gas sales and marketing, and currently maintains strategic relationships with key customers, community government officials, and city agencies that lead to partnerships that align with corporate objectives. She is also heavily involved in campaigns that support the community. She's raised over $1 million to support local communities through the United Way of NYC, and she has also worked alongside the HeartShare Inc. to issue over $30 million in grants to support customers affected by Hurricane Sandy. Please welcome Terri Yardi.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Ken, for that warm introduction. I'm Terri Yardi, manager at National Grid and a proud member of the American Association of Blacks in Energy and the AABE-NYMAC chapter. And so we've come to the end of the summit. I want to first thank all of you for attending, engaging, and networking over the last 2 days in our first, but certainly not our last AABE-NYMAC summit on sustainable energy, innovation, and community. This summit was truly a labor of love, with our planning team meeting nearly a year and a half ago, eagerly setting our sights on creating a spectacular event to be hosted in April. However, you know the saying, when man makes plans, right? Because as we all know, COVID hit and totally upended those plans, forcing our team to quickly pivot to a virtual event. And even though we aren't face-to-face, I dare say that this event has been as extraordinary as we had planned for it to be in person. Over the last 2 days, we were delighted to hear from dynamic elected officials and leaders in various fields of the energy sector. And today specifically, we were welcomed by longstanding member of AABE-NYMAC, and Secretary Renee McClure, followed by remarks from National Grid's President, John Bruckner, who spoke about the state of the energy sector and the breadth of work that National Grid has done and is doing to help lead the charge in shaping a sustainable energy future with our commitment to getting to net zero by 2050. Our keynote speaker, Latrice Walker from the State Energy Committee, provided us with an amazing overview regarding New York State's initiatives in the clean energy arena, remarking that this was everyone's responsibility. We all need to get involved. I especially loved Latrice's statement about not just kicking the door open, but certainly knocking it off its hinges as it pertains to New York being the leader in sustainable energy. And what can I say about today's joint sessions? I know it was a hard task to choose which session to attend when you had to decide whether to listen to our engaging panelists in session 1, Navigating the New Normal, which held a thoughtful discussion on how utilities were able to adapt during this pandemic while working to eradicate racial inequities. We know that every community has been affected by this pandemic. However, we also know that Black and Brown communities continue to bear the brunt of the burden of this pandemic through the systematic inequities in wealth, poverty, employment, housing, health status, as well as access to healthcare. As this discussion clearly showed, our industry is certainly not immune to these issues, and we were able to glean from our esteemed panelists how these issues impacted their businesses, how they've responded, and their plans for the future. And then you had our second session, Empower, and I'll say that again, Empower, because I love that, which was really symbolic as we had 4 powerful, magnetic women who allowed us into their world, showing us how they navigated their careers through mentorship, personal branding, and their own style of leadership, inspiring us with little nuggets to continue to challenge ourselves, asking for what you want, being comfortable at being uncomfortable, and that you are your own business. As women in a traditionally male-dominated field, it was great to get these insights from leaders in their respective fields. The good news is if you missed either one of these phenomenal sessions, this summit has been recorded, and so you'll be able to review all of the sessions at a later date. Our summit's theme of sustainable energy, innovation, and our community could not be any more apt in a year that shook us to our core. I was struck by a statement I heard recently. When everything changes, there is an opportunity to change everything. The energy industry, our industry, which has been traditionally slow to embrace change, is now faced with adapting, becoming more agile, more willing to challenge the status quo, and do the necessary work that will lead us to a cleaner, more sustainable, more equitable future. We hope that by attending this summit, you were able to recognize the vital role we all play in getting us there. With that, I wanted to thank all our guest speakers for their attendance, beginning with our elected officials, Representative Yvette Clark, State Assembly Member Latrice Walker, Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams, from the Office of the Mayor, Gregorio Mayers, Mark Chambers, our panel of speakers and moderators throughout the summit, Duane Andrews, Michael Jones-Bay, Milo Blair, John Bruckner, Gina Callender, Don Shabaspor, Deneen Donnelly, Richard Plateau, Ophelia Gabrino, Caroline Green, Joan Jacobs, Melanie Littlejohn, Amy Marshalock, Carla Hunter Ramsey, Herbert Pruitt, Francis Reshevsky, Andrew Reed, Tatiana Rock, Toma Gadsden Shaw, Robin Bramwell Stewart, Pat Watts, Steve Wemple, and Nicole Leon. Thank you for sharing your leadership, wisdom, and your experiences with all of our attendees. Finally, I wanted to thank the members of the AABE-NYMAC Planning Committee. On a personal note, I've been a part of this chapter a little over 5 years, working alongside some of the most talented, hardworking individuals in the energy sector. The work they do for this chapter is separate from their day jobs, and the work that they've done to bring this summit to life has just been phenomenal. These individuals believe in this chapter, and we believe in our mission to provide an avenue where energy professionals can learn more about the energy industry through education, mentoring, community service, and networking. I am extremely proud of the work that we do through the SEE program, where we educate and elevate the next generation of brilliant energy professionals. If you haven't heard of this fantastic program, head on over to our website at www.aabe.nymac.org to learn more. So, thank you to our fearless leader and president of our chapter, Mr. Bill Suggs, whose tenacity was our guiding light. Floor Callender and Jerry Dawes, our quarterbacks, Priscilla Houston, Tansy Silver and Torian Casey are all-around geniuses. We could not have done this without you. Renee McClure, Khalees Knight, Gina Callender, Greg Elcock, Dominique Dodd, Laisha Hundley, Catherine Lewis, Gloria Patterson, Ken Shaw, Sonia Middleton, Brianna Suggs, Ruby Pittman, and Phyllis Thorne. Thank you, team. As we look forward to a new year, we ask you or attendees to please keep connected to our AABE-NYMAC chapter. Look for details regarding our next event, which is our virtual executive reception in February, by visiting our website. I'll say it again at www.aabe-nymac.org, where additional details will be shared. Once again, thank you for attending this, our first summit. And as we approach the holidays, I wish each of you and your families a happy, healthy, and safe holiday. Be well.
I'd just like to thank Terri for her closing statements, and I'd like to once again reiterate the thanks to all the speakers and panelists today on behalf of AABE-NYMAC for your time in making the summit happen. For those who are available later today, AABE-NYMAC will be hosting a virtual sip and paint at 5:30 p.m. And as a nod towards the future, AABE-NYMAC will also be hosting a virtual executive reception in February. Please check out the AABE website at aabe-nymac.org for details. Once again, thank you all for your time today. Take care.